I thought I told all of you that this game is too grown up for you. This is why I usually just cover audiobooks. But for a small change of pace, we did decide to give Cyberpunk 2077 a shot. When you get past all the edge and gratuity and bad publicity, there's actually something quite satisfying about the storytelling in this game. Something which, whether you write cyberpunk or any other genre, you might just be able to learn from. A big thanks to World Anvil for helping to make this video possible, and to all of our supporters on Patreon. We love you. You might know cyberpunk as the genre of neon lights and leather coats. A world where physically augmented half-human, half-machine rogues move through claustrophobic megacities in the rain. Where once hopeful technologies have become the tools of oppression. Where bands of misfits wage futile wars against the tyrannical engines of greed. All of this is very cyberpunk, and very fun, and very interesting. But the part of the genre that has always held my attention is the liminal nature of it. The world of cyberpunk isn't just a digital dystopia full of groundbreaking technology. It's also a world of change. The technology in these stories brings us to the brink of what is human, and what may no longer be. As a big fan of humankind myself, you can imagine how interesting this is to me. It almost makes me feel like I'm not all that different from you after all. This comes up in a lot of different stories in a lot of different ways. There are some really overt examples out there, like Blade Runner's Replicants, which are basically just new and improved artificial humans given a baked-in expiration date so humanity isn't instantly rendered obsolete. There are also subtler examples, like in the video game Soma, where your mind can be copied into a digital environment free from the mortal constraints of your body. The fun of this is that these technologies beg a whole lot of questions. Mainly, where is the line? When have you changed the human experience so much that it no longer qualifies as human? This question isn't often answered, but rather reveled in for all the fantastic and often dreary speculation it can lead to. The term for this transitional and confusing space is transhuman, which is really just the evolutionary process along the way to posthuman. Julian Huxley, the brother of Aldous Huxley, who wrote the book Brave New World, wrote that the human species can, if it wishes, transcend itself. Not just sporadically, an individual here in one way, an individual there in another way, but in its entirety, as humanity. And the technology in these stories is the missing link that makes it possible. This could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. If we were discussing Golden Age hard SF, this would probably lead to a species of golden, angelic post-humanoids living in an immaculate utopia. Cyberpunk is not that. It's more skeptical, more personal. This isn't just speculation about what the future could hold, it's an investigation of how this transhuman future might challenge humanity. And to give us a lens through which to view that challenge, cyberpunk stories are usually attached to divested rogues who are, like everyone else, trapped in the grinding gears of a system which seeks to abuse humanity's new and delicate state. Whether that be the plotting superintelligence Wintermute in William Gibson's flagship novel Neuromancer, or the mechanical overlords of the Matrix. By watching the conflicts these simple humans have with these abusive forces, the audience learns something about their own humanity. Even this audience member. And this was the thing I appreciated so much about Cyberpunk 2077. In a way few other stories have managed, it put me eye to eye with that conflict, made it feel personal. Not just because it's a game and I'm controlling the character and their actions, but through its story structure. It's a method I think writers of every genre could benefit from, but especially those who write in deeply personal and challenging genres like cyberpunk. Now, before I tell you how the game does this, I need to give you some context, which means spoilers. Early in the story, the player ends up in the fairly inconvenient situation of having a second mind downloaded into their body, in this case, Keanu Reeves. There are worse parasites to have. The process is supposed to genetically modify your body in preparation for the new occupant, but there's a bit of a malfunction and the new mind can't completely take root. So, your body is steadily becoming incompatible with you, and both you and the invading mind are dying. You spend the latter part of the game chasing a promise that both your mind and the invading mind can be removed, and that you can be installed back into your body, saving your life. One small problem though, those genetic modifications I mentioned earlier, they've already been made. Even though both minds can be removed successfully, only the other mind is now suitable for reinstallation. If you're put back in, you might be able to live a relatively normal life for another 6 more months or so, but your condition would officially be terminal in a way that no known technology can fix. And this is where we come to the pivotal decision of the game. Will you return to your body and die as you? Or will you stay in cyberspace and live forever as something else? There are a bunch of different endings to this game, but you're pretty much always met with some permutation of this question, and it is a very interesting question indeed. I don't get angry very easily, but I'll admit, the first time I was faced with this decision, I was, we'll say, unamused. I felt as if I'd been duped. I spent so long chasing the promise of survival, and now the only way to survive was to leave the world behind, become nothing more than a bunch of code? I'll pass, thanks. I spent a not insignificant amount of time stewing over this. Why was I so bothered? Was it really because the story misled me? Plenty of good stories do that, and they didn't bother me. Was it because the ending was unfair? Well, no, I'm not owed a specific outcome as a player. The story is the story. Eventually, after a lot of grasping around, I think I figured out what was going on in my head. By putting me in the situation of someone trying so desperately to survive, making that my objective as a player, the developers gave me the opportunity to really value the protagonist's humanity, to feel it. After dedicating time and effort to protecting it, getting to know what it meant by interacting with other characters and making decisions along the way that would define who the protagonist is, the decision at the end actually had a very personal impact on me. It wasn't just live forever or die in 6 months, no brainer. It was live forever in the emptiness of a cold, unknowable void, or die surrounded by everything that makes you, you. I was annoyed because I cared about my character's humanity. I didn't want to lose that, even if doing so technically meant my character, would survive. And the fact that this story could make me feel this way is profound. It's hard to make something as grand and nebulous as the concept of what it means to be human so personally effective. I can very easily imagine how a story themed around something like that could become so broad and so pretentious that you can't relate to it at all. But this game, and often Cyberpunk as a genre, has a way of grounding us. Fairly simple protagonists with fairly simple motives, who, by virtue of fighting a system that seeks to abuse their newly redefined humanity, have to grapple with what that humanity actually is. In Blade Runner, Rick Deckard is more or less a retired executioner, not too interested in the bigger picture, until he's holding it in his arms, staring into its eyes. In Neuromancer, Henry Case is just a cyberspace hacker who'd like to reverse the damage done to his fried nervous system so that he can get back to work. And in Cyberpunk 2077, you're just a merc with big dreams who doesn't want to die before you see them come true. These are people, motivations, circumstances we can understand and get invested in. That way, when the big corporate machine or the scions of the singularity come knocking, we have something to worry about, a frame of reference for what's at stake. I think the very simple and powerful lesson any fiction writer can take from this is that not every protagonist needs to be a selfless revolutionary, especially not when the forces they're up against are posing such a big thematic threat. Sometimes these grand, sprawling ideas need to be looked at through a simple perspective in order to be meaningful to us. Sometimes a punk can do a lot more than a hero. When I come across a method or an idea like this, I like to find some way to try it out if I can. But there's a lot that goes into a good story beyond the writing and the method. a lot of planning. It can be a drag if you're just trying to get to the execution. This stuff can be very confusing. But World Anvil can help lighten the load. World Anvil is a browser-based world-building platform designed for writers, novelists, tabletop game masters, game developers, anyone who has a world in their head that needs building. With tools for linking together your content like a wiki, creating interactive maps, timelines, and family trees, and options for choosing who to share all of it with, World Anvil will keep your creation safe, well-organized, and easy to share with your players and fans. And that's just the world-building side of it. Now you can even use the platform's novel writing software to write, plan, plot, and, shockingly, even publish your stories. As in publish for money. The real deal. Go to worldanvil.com/talefoundry to sign up for free. And if you want to join the guild there, which will unlock a veritable arsenal of amazing features like comprehensive privacy settings, presentation options, and so much more, you can use the code TALEFOUNDRY to save up to 30% on an annual membership. Again, that's worldanvil.com/talefoundry, and the code, of course, is TaleFoundry. Go light up the forge. Before we wrap up, I'd like to give a quick thanks to all the helpful humans who support the show on Patreon. All those words you see scrolling in the background of these videos? Those are actually the names of our Patreon maintenance crew, without whom this show would be impossible. And a special word to all of our top patrons, Lord Gate, RPG Grenade, and the Autumn Rider. Thank you so much. And that's it for this video. There's usually a few weeks between uploads, so if you want more Tale Foundry in the meantime, come join our community. We have a Discord server that's basically like a big family of creatives, a lot of love there. We also run writing groups on Twitch every week if you want to get some practice in. You can find links to all of it in the description. Hope to see you there. Until then, thanks for watching and keep making stuff up. I'll see you next time. Bye.